Welcome to Talley's Telecom Talk, where we explore the latest trends and technologies shaping the world of wireless communications. I'm Jason LaVoie, Talley's Regional Sales Manager in the Midwest, and your host for today's episode. Today, we're diving into a topic that's increasingly important for field technicians, engineers, and system integrators: digital modulation in the modern RF world. Joining us are two product experts for Bird Technologies, a longstanding leader in RF measurement. Michelle Specht, Senior Product Manager for the 4480A digital watt meter, and Brad Odhner, Product Manager for the GenHawk GH60 signal generator. Michelle and Brad, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having us. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm very glad to join. This is a great topic, something we've been looking forward to talk about.
Okay, before we dive in, what do you both hope our audience takes away from this episode?
Jason, I hope that our listeners walk away with a better understanding of how digital modulation has kind of changed the way we measure RF power, why having the right tools is key to staying accurate and efficient in the field.
Exactly. The traditional tools just weren't built to keep up with today's complex RF environment and complex RF signals. So we're here to talk about why that matters and how new tools that we have here at Bird are helping to solve those challenges.
Let's start with the basics. Digital modulations are everywhere now, in public safety, commercial networks, and military systems. Why is this shift happening?
It really comes down to the efficiency and the capability of the signals. So digital modulations like we see in P25 and Tetra in the public safety sphere, but also commercial standards like LTE and pretty much every modern cellular standard. By switching to a digital mode of communication, you can put more data through the same amount of spectrum. You can achieve better clarity, so we get less interference there. And you have enhanced security, particularly with things like P25 and Tetra, where you can have encryption on your communication channel. And that's all using the same spectrum that's already been assigned and was being used for analog signals. Or in many cases, you're able to use less of the spectrum by switching to digital. So digital overall, it allows more robust communication that's more noise immune, faster, and more dense.
Yeah, you're right, Brad. The move to digital modulation has really brought us a lot of advantages into the market. It's more efficient. It allows for clear voice communication. It uses the spectrum more effectively, but it also makes things more complicated when it comes to measurement. So when I look at my product lines for traditional watt meters, they were designed for continuous wave signals where the power stays steady and is very predictable. But digital signals are very dynamic. They vary over time. They don't really follow a steady pattern, and they can really throw off older meters and equipment and lead to power readings that aren't real reliable.
Michelle, you mentioned measurement challenges. Can you talk a little bit about where traditional watt meters fall short and what the 4480A brings to the table?
So when we're looking at traditional watt meters, they were really built for the CW signal, steady analog and analog waveforms that stay, kind of constant over time. It's fine for older systems, but with, like Brad said, digital modulation like P25, Tetra, DMR, they don't behave that way. So the power levels shift, the waveform changes, and the signals come in bursts instead of kind of a continuous stream. So, older watt meters weren't designed to handle that complexity. They might give you a reading, but that doesn't always have a true reflection of what's happening on the line, especially with modulations that change both in amplitude and phase. Looking from an engineering perspective, we knew that traditional diode-based meters wouldn't cut it. So they tend to react to peak voltage, which leads to an inaccurate reading when the signal varies. So with the 4480, we took a different approach. It uses the Schottky diode that operates what we call in a square law region. So not to get too technical, it means instead of chasing peaks, the meter's responding to average power of the signal, not just the peak. That gives you much more accurate picture regardless of your modulation. So the design is what makes the 4480A so versatile. It measures everything from simple CW signals to complex digital waveforms, consistently and accurately without overestimating or reporting power. And then with the 4480, you have your plus and minus 4% accuracy of the readings, which is forward and reflected power, return loss of ISWAR, and the option to toggle between watts and dBm, which you don't get with a traditional analog meter, all on a high resolution display. So it gives the field techs the confidence to know what they're measuring is really matters, and they can do it very quickly.
And from what I heard, it doesn't require separate elements.
Yeah, you're right. The 4480 is completely element free, which is really a big shift from older, watt meters. The legacy ones, you had to carry a set of elements. You had to swap them out based on the frequency and power you were testing. It took time. If you had the wrong one, you've lost it. Your reading could be off, or you just couldn't take the measurement at all if you didn't have the element. So with the 4480, there's none of that. You just place the sensor in line into the transmission path, and it handles everything. No manual setup, no calibration steps, and it gives fast, accurate average power readings.
Let's shift gears to the other side of the equation. Brad, talk to us about signal generation and the GenHawk GH60.
Sure. Something I've seen and that we've seen here is that signal generators are often really underutilized in field testing in favor of just guessing and checking what happens. And when signal generators are used, it's often just in continuous wave, so just outputting a CW signal and seeing what happens there to that portion of the spectrum. But their signal generators are really essential for doing things like validating receiver performance, performing coverage studies, like for distributed antenna systems or DAS systems in spaces, for really buildings and large event spaces, and for doing things like interference immunity, so checking whether your device can appropriately respond when interference takes place, and even doing things like component testing, where you might be interested in more complex behavior beyond what just CW can do. So the GH60 we designed to be really, it's a compact, basically just handheld battery-powered device, and it can generate not only analog CW signals, but it's really designed to generate very complex digital modulations, up to 6.5 gigahertz. So beyond just CW, continuous wave, you got amplitude and frequency modulations, but things like cellular standards like LTE, 5G signals, and GNSS signals, so like your GPS receivers. So it's really perfect for doing a lot of that receiver validation performance, working in those coverage studies, and doing the interference immunity, where you're able to just add noise onto a generated complex digital modulation with the GH60, and check whether your receiver, and at what point really your receiver is not able to determine and distinguish that digital signal anymore. So we see a lot of people wanting to do, especially that noise immunity of generating noise on top of their signal. And you can just immediately see why it's useful in the cellular standards, but also for GPS in working with GPS receivers.
So the GH60 can actually mimic the signals technicians are trying to receive?
Exactly. So the idea is that you're generating the real world signals that your device actually wants to see, and including the noisy environment that you might be working in. And so through that, you're able to really verify that your system is working correctly or under what parameters it's working correctly.
We've worked closely together for years. How does the Bird Talley partnership help bring these solutions to life for customers?
Talley really has a strong customer base. You guys know your customers, especially when working in, mission critical environments. You help us get to the right tools into the hands of the people who need them.
And I would add to that your team provides a lot of feedback that shapes our roadmap. So the GH60 was refined and somewhat designed based on insights from your team and your customers. So that's really the value that I see that a strong partnership brings.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Let's recap. Digital modulations are here to stay. Traditional analog tools can't keep up. The 4480A and the GenHawk GH60 are modern, field-ready tools designed for today's complex RF environments. Michelle and Brad, any final thoughts?
Just that, test equipment really isn't optional anymore. It's essential. If you're working with digital modulations, you need the tools that really actually understand those signals. And otherwise, you're just kind of flying blind.
Definitely. And just to add on, I'd say we're looking forward to keep innovating and keep developing new technologies that are making people out in the field and in the lab, making their jobs easier. So we hope to hear from you and continue our work together.
Thanks again to both of you. If you'd like to learn more about these tools, visit Tallycom.com. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and send us your feedback. Until next time, stay tuned and stay connected.